Today I'm telling you a little bit about a game that has been on my game shelf for quite a while, and somehow I never played it, and then recently I decided to pull it off the shelf, give it a spin, and I really enjoyed it. This is Condottiere by Fantasy Flight Games. It is part of their Silver Line series, so very small games, so quite affordable, but this is a very nice looking game, very well produced. The rules of play, 3rd edition, are quite clear. It comes with a board, which is not very common in games this small. It's a mounted board. We'll need to do a little bit of work to make it lay flat, or just put a piece of something on top of it. Then the game also includes a deck of cards. These two decks are separated just for storage purposes, but they are a single deck. You need to shuffle them together. And then you also have some tokens that were nested under that thing. They came out as I pulled out the things. You have these cubes. Each player has a set of cubes of a single color. Then you also have two big pawns. One is the Condottiere pawn that tells you where the next battle is going to take place, and one is the Papal Favors token. The game is set during the Renaissance, in the age of the Condottiere, and it is about, well, the mess that Italy was in the 16th century, with all the wars that were going on and all of these independent states fighting against each other to expand their control, and, well, just to mess up everybody's life and making everybody's life miserable. It was an age of great art, but also a lot of war, and the art and a lot of art of war theory and practice. Now, this is mainly a card game, and it comes with a standard set of rules and with several variants. I'm not going to teach you the basic game. I'm going to teach you the variant that I play, which is a hybrid between the basic game, and then I simply looked at the variants, I selected some that I like, and that's what I'm going to teach you today. Also, because the game has been around for quite a while, there are chances that you know the basic game already. So today I'm going to share with you the version of the game that I like the most, that I really enjoy playing. Again, it's not that I made it up, it is simply my own selection of rules from this Rules of Play booklet, as authorized by the rules themselves. You can create your own game. This is the one that I like. Now, in Condottiere, Arnaudo version, and again, hybrid between Arnaudo version and Fantasy Flight version, each player starts with a hand of 7 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The game is divided in battles. Each turn is a battle. The youngest player decides where to start the game, where the first battle is going to take place, and places the Condottiere token marker in the state that the players will be fighting for. Each player, again, has a hand of cards. Oh, this is not the best hand of cards to show you what the game is like, but the basic idea, then I'll show you cards individually. Basic idea is that each player will play a card in front of himself or herself to start a battle line. Then the next player will play a card, and the next player will play a card, and the next player, suppose we have 3 players, will play a card, and so on and so forth until the battle is over. During your turn, you can do only one of 2 things. You can play a card before yourselves to your battle line, or you can pass. If you pass, then you're out of that battle only in terms of card playing. That means you cannot play cards anymore for that battle. You're not out of the battle entirely, because you can still win. It may simply be that at a certain point you have enough strength in front of you that you think you will still win the battle. And so the game proceeds until all players have passed, and at that point you resolve the battle, you see who won the battle. So by passing, you simply lose the right to play further cards in that battle. You're not kicked out of the battle, you do not have to lose, you may still win. So players simply play cards. When all players have played cards to their heart's content, and everybody has passed. The battle is over. You compare the battle lines. You see who the winner is. The winner of the battle, suppose it is yellow, places a cube in that area to indicate, yeah, let's do red because it's more visible. Let's do blue because it's even more visible. The winner of the battle places a cube in the region where the battle took place. The winner of the battle also takes control of the pawn. Players draw cards. They will draw up to 3 and up to their hand maximum. The hand maximum is 10 plus 1 card for each region that you control. Then the player that won the last battle also gets to place the Condottiere token on the board. That is, the player gets to choose where the next battle is going to be fought. The winner of the game is the player that first controls a certain number of regions, and the number of regions that you need to win the game depends on whether or not the regions are adjacent to one another. For example, in a 3-player game, you need to control 4 regions that are adjacent to one another, that form a continuous territory, in order to win the game. And there are different ways, of course, in which those regions can be adjacent. Or, again, in a 3-player game, you need to control 6 regions that are not adjacent to one another to win the game. This is the situation on the board. Then the blue player has won the game, even though the regions are not forming a single territory. The number of regions that you need to win the game depends on the number of players, and again, varies on whether the regions are adjacent to one another or not. This is the basic idea. How do you win a battle? You win a battle by having a higher total in terms of, let's call them strength points, higher total than the opponent. If there's a tie, nothing happens. The battle is a tie. Control of the region doesn't change. In the basic game, you can only battle for regions that are not controlled by any players yet. So this is the situation. I wouldn't be able to start the battle in this region. In the version that I like, you can actually attack regions that are controlled by other players. The defender of the region that is being fought for has an advantage, that is, he can pass indefinitely. He can see what other players are doing. You can see the total that the other players have put before them before he plays cards. He doesn't lose the right to play cards by passing. And that is a very basic but pretty effective way of showing how well the defender of a region can wait to see the armies that the other players have gathered before he shows his hand, quite literally. And it works well in terms of game mechanics too. There are game effects that allow the Papal Favor token to be in play, and when the favor token, the Papal Favors token is in play, that token is played in a single region, and that region cannot be attacked. There cannot be battles that are fought there. The winner of a battle, again, is the player with the highest single total, and there are several card effects that may modify that. There are different types of cards that are counted to reach that total. Cards with a white number or mercenary cards. They are the most common card in the deck. They have values that go from 1 to 10, and well, they have no other fact than the fact that they simply add a numerical value to the total. And there are cards that will modify the value of the mercenaries or the way the mercenaries work. There are other cards that also have a number that is added to the total that is used to determine who wins the battle, and these cards are the heroine and the courtesan, but these cards are not mercenaries, so they are not affected by the card effects that affect the mercenaries. The heroine, for example, is just a hard-hitting card with a value of 10, and that card is not affected by other game effects. The courtesan has only a value of 1, is not a mercenary, so it's not affected by their card effects, by their game effects. but has the advantage that if you're the player with the most courtesans in play, when the round is over, when the battle is over, you get control of the mercenary token, of the Condottiere token, whether or not you have won the battle. Usually the winner of the battle gets the token and gets to choose where the next battle will take place. Maybe this time you didn't win the battle, but your courtesans were scheming politically, diplomatically for you, so at least you get to decide where the next battle will take place, even if you won the previous if you lost the previous battle militarily. The drummer, very powerful card, will double the value of the mercenary cards only. That can boost the value of your cards immensely. But there are the card effects that can make things trickier and more complex than it will look like at first. The winter card, when it comes into play, it destroys the spring card that may be in play, or even cards if there are multiple ones, even though I have no idea why you would place multiple cards. Spring cards, well, maybe you have been forced by the situation, you played that one just because you wanted to play something. Still, multiple winter cards or multiple spring cards have no additional effects. But when you play a winter card, you remove the spring cards that may be in play, and the value, the numerical value of all the mercenaries is reduced to 1. So at that point, you simply need the sheer number of mercenary cards. It doesn't matter what their value is, their printed value, they all go down to 1. Spring cards destroy winter cards that may be in play, and also they boost the mercenary cards by 3 points. So again, courtesans and heroines are not affected by winter or spring, but the printed value of the mercenaries is. The printed value of the mercenaries is modified by that. Scarecrow, maybe you could call it the dummy or the decoy. It allows you to bring back a mercenary card that you played earlier, and you bring it back to your hand. Very sneaky, very tricky. Also, if you invested earlier in a battle and you realize that you're not going to win that battle, it could be a good idea to play a Scarecrow to bring back a good card, for example a 10, so you bring it back to your hand so you can use it in a later battle. The Bishop is a tricky guy. The Bishop eliminates from all of the battle lines the single highest value. So in this case, if it were played now, the Bishop would send that guy to the discard pile. If played now, the highest value is 4, so both of these cards will be discarded. All copies of the single highest value are sent home by the Bishop. Also, the Bishop gives the Papal Favor token to the player that played it. The Bishop card is discarded after it has been played and its effects have been resolved, and the player that played the Bishop gets to control the favor of the Pope. Then, very important, very tricky card, incredibly tricky card actually, is the Surrender card. Where is it? Surrender. Somewhere in the deck there is a Surrender card. Actually, there are several. And when the Surrender cards are in play, when you know that they are still in the deck and they're going to come out of the deck at some point, here we go, Surrender card. Well, if you're caring about the battle, because sometimes you don't really care about the battle, you're simply sitting one out and waiting for your hand to replenish, thanks to the card draw at the end of a battle. But if you do care about a battle and there are Surrender cards that may be in other players' hands, well, things are tricky because the Surrender card forces a battle to end immediately. That means that if you care about a battle, you need to always be 1 point ahead of the other players. And maybe you can't, so you play whatever you have and you're crossing your fingers that nobody's playing a Surrender card before the game goes back to you and you can strengthen your battle line. So Surrender cards are extremely tricky. You may win a battle with a single courtesan if for whatever reason that is the situation. For example, the Bishop has sent home a ton of soldiers. You can win a battle with a very small amount of points. Again, if the situation is right and you play the Surrender card at the last moment, at the right moment. This is the basic idea. The game is extremely simple. You play cards, you total your numbers, and if you're the player with the highest value, you win the battle. However, the game is not as dull as it sounds from that description. It's not dull at all because of all the card effects that interact with one another and with the numerical values. And those card effects really bring flavor to the game, even bring theme to the game. You can see to an extent the theme coming to life through these effects. Bishops intervening and changing the favor of the Pope, courtesans scheming in the courts as the mercenaries are fighting in the battlefield. There is theme that comes to life in the game, and the card effects actually really make the game interesting. The game is not dull at all. The game doesn't even feel to be only about numbers. It really becomes about surprising the opponent, creating a good, powerful hand of cards. There are hands of cards that are just incredibly powerful per se, but very often a hand of card is powerful only contextually, situationally, that is, in the interaction with the other cards. You may have a drummer, and that is super powerful, but then winter comes, so the value of the mercenaries is reduced considerably, and then a single heroine may be stronger than a bunch of mercenaries boosted by a drummer if the winter card is in play. Then a spring card comes in, and the situation is reverted completely. The situation changes again. Very interesting interaction of the cards and the card effects. Tense gameplay, yes, luck is a factor. We have had games where a player did not get a single good card. Well, actually, there are cards that are great. Almost all cards are useful, but if you get a lot of surrender and bishop cards and drummers and no mercenaries at all, it may be rare. It won't happen very often, but if that happens, then the player really doesn't stand much of a chance. Still, that is not what will happen every game. In most games, you will have a lot of interesting interaction, swings of fortune going back and forth. Everybody will be lucky or unlucky, at least in some phases of the game. The length of the game may vary because sometimes you may have a player that just boom, 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 wins a lot of battles. Again, that doesn't have to happen every time. And other times, things are evened out battle after battle. You see the empires of the players growing gradually on the board, and players fight for key battles because there may be battles that are more important than others. If this is the situation and then there's going to be a battle here, you really do not want the blue player to win that battle. So actually, even though the game is mainly a card game, the spatial aspect, the map representing Italy, and just the spatial strategy on the board, those are still very important things that you do need to take into account. I find that this game to be a good hybrid between a board game and a card game. Card game and board game, so there's something for everybody. Components that look great, rules that are easy to teach and to master. Interesting gameplay, tense moments, not super complicated. This is definitely a light game, but one that definitely is satisfying to play. To me, Condottiere is a game that, in retrospect, has been sitting for way too long on my bookshelf. Definitely, I'm going to play it more in the future. I'm not going to let it gather dust for as long as it has since I initially bought it. Now, this is going to be a game that I want to play because this is a game that I enjoyed quite a bit. Condottiere by Fantasy Flight Game. Light game, but a good one.